Happy Saturday morning, guys. This is Brent with Lykins Motorsports. We are looking at another FE build. I've got probably 5 or 6 stacked that I'm trying to get through, and these were all from orders that I took last year before I cracked my back up pretty good. I always dread lifting these 75-pound FE cranks, so I haven't taken on any more FE builds since then. I need to see what my back does over the long term before I continue to tear it up further. Little small block stuff I don't mind, but man, these cranks are chunks in here, and you go in, you set them in, set them out, checking bearing clearances, doing this, doing that, and it gets to be a lot. So we are on the tail end of a good dyno session yesterday. We had Mr. Mike's 511 FE that made right at 900 horsepower, turning the front accessories and fighting a pretty junky oil pan set up for the dyno. But thanks to God, that went very well. I always say my prayers a lot before I take an engine to the dyno. I can do everything to my ability here, but there's always that possibility that something isn't right or something wasn't done right or whatever, because we're all human, and the parts manufacturers are human, the machinists are human. But I always say my prayers and ask God for his help before I go to the dyno. Always good practice. So we are on Mr. Cody's 482 all aluminum tunnel port build. This is going to be using Jay Brown's new tunnel port heads. And if you want to look back through my videos and see where those were showcased and assembled, you can do that. Just got this block out of the box, and it's already been pressure tested and has already had the sleeve set. So we'll talk about that just for a few seconds. Aluminum, so I pressure test everything new, okay? You don't really trust the foundries to get everything perfect. For some reason, aluminum blocks have a lot more issues with porosity than the cast iron stuff do. And these all aluminum blocks can tend to, since the water jacket is essentially on the other side of this wall here, and you got the lifter bore there, there's sometimes a tendency for a little bit of porosity there, and they will pressure test and they will leak out of the lifter bores. So always a good thing. That's been done. The sleeves have been set. So from Robert Pond Motorsports, the sleeves were installed, but what needs to be done is you have to put these blocks in an oven and torque a torque plate down with a head gasket with the fire ring in it, which sets on the seal, and you crank that down, and that sets the sleeves. And then you go back over with a surfacing tool during the machining process and make sure everything is the way it needs to be. So these blocks are not machined at all. They need to be, you can tell, no cross hatches. It's just a rough cylinder finish. They need to be bored and honed with torque plates, line honed with the fasteners that we're going to use. In this case, with aluminum, you always use studs. You don't want a bolt trying to pull the threads out. You want a stud that stays in the block. So these always get head studs. They always get main studs. No ifs, ands, or buts. A line honed with the studs, surfaced, and there's a couple other machining processes that have to be done. On the pond blocks, the lifter bores are undersized, so those have to be honed. Mr. Cody's going to be getting these Trend tool steel solid flat tappet lifters. I've measured these and I've set my bore gauge to those, and you can see here these lifter bores are almost, well, let's try it this way. I'm at an angle where I'm hitting the block when I try to, yeah. So almost a thou undersized, and that would be a thou undersized for zero clearance. So we want, you know, what clearance is needed for those lifters and an aluminum block. So we'll be honing a thou out to get basically what would be an interference fit, and then we hone another, say, thou or so to get the oil clearance that we need. So all of these Pond Motorsports blocks have to have the lifter bores finished. If this were a cast iron pond block, there will be a drain hole here for camera heads that needs to be plugged. There's a couple other things that have to be done. Let me go ahead and flip this upside down, and then we can talk about the things that have to be done on the bottom. But let's see. Before I do that, though, this plug behind the distributor needs to be tapped just a little bit deeper, and we can custom fit a distributor in there, and I don't have to worry about boogering the lifter bore up because those are going to be honed. But the plug needs to be tapped just a little bit deeper to make sure that the plug is behind this surface here so the distributor won't catch it on the way in. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to be doing some of these things on the video that need to be done. This is how far that plug goes in from the way that the blocks come. So you need a long, sharp 1/4 inch pipe plug tap, and one that will get you, you know, through this hole and into that hole and out here far enough to where you can get a good tap handle on it. But need another 2 or 3 threads tapped out of that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. All right, so I just use this big old long, it's about a 6-inch 1/4 pipe tap with a pretty good length tap handle. You just get it started. I haven't hit the tight spot yet. There we go. You want to put oil on all your plugs that go into aluminum. Otherwise, they will gall up pretty easily. All right, I'm going to get you out of the cradle here. So we can see that we are sitting below surface there. That just took, you saw it, that's all it took. And what I can do is I can drop a distributor in there and make sure that nothing hits. All right, so we're in good shape. If that plug had been any interference, then that distributor would not have dropped down at all. So that leads me to the next thing that needs to be done. This will be done after the machine work is done, but these blocks use an aftermarket Durbond cam bearing set. These bearings are very wide, okay? So you have to be very careful when you knock in bearings 2 and 4 because the bearings are so wide that it can impede the lifter bore. It'll actually occlude the lifter bore. And I guess impede was not the word to use there. Occlude would be a good word to use. But you'll figure that out if you did it wrong when you try to put the lifter in on assembly and the lifter won't go down. So you've got to be very careful on that. The front bearing is so wide that the distributor will not go in if you use that wide bearing. You can come back from the backside and take a die grinder and cut a bunch of it out. But what I like to do is just use a front bearing off of a regular Ford FE cam bearing set. It's narrow enough that you don't have any problems whatsoever. But once you get the block machined and the cam bearings are installed, you have to install the distributor again, just to make sure that you have no interference there. And since this is an aluminum block, I put some green Loctite on the backs of all the cam bearings. The blocks expand so much with heat that the risk of spinning a cam bearing is greater than on an iron block, so you have to take precautions so that doesn't happen. Also, when you set your valve lash, so these blocks grow, since it's all aluminum, you got aluminum block, aluminum heads, everything grows, and you end up, your valve lash will grow about 14 thousandths. So you have to take that into account when you set your valve lash cold. Okay, we're making our way over to the driver's side of the block. This is a side oiler block. It's got the front hole. It's also got the passage right here. This takes an O-ring fitting. This is a -6 AN with an O-ring, nice and sealed up in the back. The hole for the dipstick, so you can either plug this or you can drill and tap it. This hole is sized for a 7/16 14 tap. So I'll just go ahead and tap this, put a set screw in it. Since the pan that Cody's going to be using is an AVA pan with the dipstick in the pan, so we don't need that hole. And that'll just take a couple seconds. I'll get that done, and then we'll look at the bottom side of the block. All right, so here's the business end of the block. Steel main caps, 2 bolts, and then side bolted. It's got a thread in here for a slide hammer. These are doweled as well, so they don't want to come out of there unless you make them come out. Pond, for some reason, doesn't really do much with the oil feed holes. I guess they're assuming that different builders use different bearings, and if you use a full groove bearing with a big hole in it, you don't need to do anything. But if you use a performance bearing, like a Federal Mogul or a Cleveite, then these holes have to be notched like you would a factory block. These are Cleveland main bearings, so you don't use an FE bearing, use a Cleveland bearing. So a 146M Federal Mogul or an MS 1010 Cleveite. I'm going to be running coated bearings, and you have to set, again, since this is a aluminum block, you have to set your main bearing clearances tighter because the block expands. Grows anywhere from a half a thou to 3/4 of a thou. So if we set our main bearing clearances somewhere around 2.2, something like that, or as close to that as we can get it, then when the block gets hot, the main bearing clearances will be what they should be if we set them up for an iron block, something like that. So I'm going to knock these main caps off, and we're going to line some bearings up and see what we need to do. We're also going to, this hole is pretty big right here already, but I'm just going to gasket match this hole like I usually do for the FEs. And then that'll be about it, and I'll drop it off at the machinist next week and stick it in their queue for the machine work. All right, so here's how our gasket match ends up being on our oil pump. There's not much to do there. I'll do that with a die grinder later on. But I'm going through here. Here's a Cleveite coated main bearing, and we've got full engagement of the oil hole there on this number 2. We are also good there. The thrust bearing is always in good shape. This one leaves a little bit to be desired, so I'll extend that one out, and the rear is always in good shape as well, but we'll check it just to make sure. Yep. So I'll probably just hit these just a little bit, extend this out a little bit so that you get a little bit more oil besides this little bit of a radius there. I'll do that on 1, 2, and 4 with just a little die grinder bit, and then I'll be done, and then we can drop this off at the machine shop. All right, so we've gasket matched our oil pump flange, and we've worked on our main bearing. So we've got a lot more oil engagement there. We're not moving the hole, we're just flaring the outside out so that the oil can have a path to get to the bearing. So same deal here. This number 4 was the worst. I had to work on it a couple times, but we got good path for oil there. Again, if you're using a full groove bearing like a regular king bearing, you probably don't have to do any of this, but I like these Cleveite race bearings, and I get those coated, and everything lives nice and long shop. So you can see here how wide this bearing surface is for the cam bearing. You can see where the distributor gear comes in, so you just have to be very careful there. You can also see here, yeah, right here. So if you were to knock this number 2 cam bearing in too far, your lifter bore is right there. So you just got to be careful. And on number 4, the same deal here and right there. So just be extra careful on that. That is not something that you want to find when you're putting the engine together and the timing cover's on, the crank's in it, the cam's in it, and you're sliding the lifters in. You're like, oh no. So I'm gonna go ahead and touch these with a die grinder, get it ready for the machine shop. And I hope this helped you guys. You guys may be building your all aluminum FE at home and using a pond block. You need to know what to do to prep it. Pressure testing, setting the sleeves, which cam bearings to use, how to dress the mains, all that. Tapping the holes, making sure the distributor will drop in. So a little bit of prep work before the machine work goes. All right, guys, hoping you all are having a good weekend. If you missed it yesterday, 900 horsepower from an FE, you need to go back and watch that video, and stay tuned for more engine building videos coming up. Y'all be good.